Moment of silence. And now the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Again, good morning, everyone. I'd like to call today's meeting to order. I'd like to begin with Commissioners' reports and comments. Vice President Baker, would you begin, please?
Is that you or me? Yeah, we didn't.
Minutes, Jeff.
Oops, excuse me, I missed it. My glasses are fogging.
We didn't have the minutes for this week.
I don't see them there.
So the minutes weren't ready, so the minutes aren't on there. Thank you for the reminder, though. Vice President Baker, then would you continue?
Just real quick, I'd like to congratulate the elected officials that will be representing Hancock the next several years. Wish them the best. And also like to thank all of the candidates that actually ran in addition to the ones that were elected. And just want to let the community know that I'm going to be doing my best to support improvements and growth and anything that I can be of help to help grow their community and keep them strong. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Kiefer?
Yes, also congratulations to those candidates who won the election in Hancock's Town Council and mayoral race yesterday. There are a lot of exciting things taking place in the small town of Hancock. I'm privileged to be a citizen of that community, and what an exciting time it must be for those people who get to help shape that community. Speaking of one of the outstanding issues that is facing that community is the discussions about the consolidation or closure of Hancock Middle Senior High School. I know the Board of Ed will be presented tonight with the FEOC committee's recommendations and studies. I would just urge the Board of Ed to seriously take into consideration all of the comments and the outpouring amount of support from those two communities that they've received. I think that should be the envy of any school board district, to have that kind of public input, that kind of parental input from the community and what they want for their children. So those communities seem to have stepped up. I've seen it more closely in Hancock just because I live there. I'm there every day. But please take into consideration the desires of the community and the parental input. Again, one of the issues I believe facing education most in this day and age is parental involvement, and that is clearly evident in those communities through this process. That's something the school board, every school board, should envy. And that's all, sir.
All right, thank you, sir. Commissioner Burkett, welcome back, second week. Good to see you.
I just want to start by thanking all those who reached out over the past week offering their thoughts on the tax cut, and I've taken every one of them seriously, including those that are in disagreement. Yesterday I met with Sheriff Mollendorf for about an hour at his office and shared my priority for public safety. Sheriff Mollendorf expressed, and rightly so, some concerns for the recent decisions that came out of Annapolis, which I think is a concern to most of us in Western Maryland. Finally, I was encouraged with the newspaper article in yesterday's newspaper that mentioned our double-digit gains in our local housing market, and you put those together with the growth we're seeing in the commercial market, and I think that's some exciting news for our area. That's all.
Thank you. Commissioner Wagner?
Yeah, I don't have any comments today.
Okay, thank you. My comments, I think, congratulations to Mayor Smith and the re-election of Leo Murray and I think newcomer Misty Kubich is how it's pronounced. But also want to thank all those who ran for putting their name on the line. And again, also thanks to the citizens who went out and voted. I heard they had a very large turnout, so that involvement in the community is another positive sign for Hancock. That concludes my report. Next up, we'll begin with staff comments, and I think Susan Small, are you outside? You're there. Look. Or Deb Condo, whoever's first, please come in. Introduce yourself in the matter.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm here this morning to request an official vote for the approval to hire Larry Etchison for the position of Human Resources Director. This is at a grade 19, step 15, annual salary $115,731.
Commissioners, thoughts, comments?
What was that salary again?
$115,731.
Thank you.
How many, you had a bunch of applications, didn't you?
We had 55 the first round and 45 the second round.
And who interviewed John, I guess, didn't you, John?
Yes. John had an interview panel that consisted of himself and 2 others.
Deb, would you please repeat the grade and step?
It's a grade 19, step 15.
Thank you.
I'd motion to approve Larry Edson, HR Director.
Okay, I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a first and a second. Any further discussion?
Just a comment, good comment here. I know we've had a lot of turnover in this particular role over the last few years. It's probably, from an employee standpoint, one of the more important positions. And I would hope that, and I'm sure our county administrator has a plan to have Mr. Etchison introduced to our employees, and I just want to make sure he's successful in his role in every respect.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any more comments?
What was his first name again?
Larry?
Larry.
Okay.
Hearing no more comments, all in favor say aye.
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 5-0, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for your leadership and your service up there in the HR department.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you, Commissioner.
And I was just, I didn't want to comment while the motion was pending, but I appreciate your comments. You know, we're looking forward to Larry starting. I believe he's going to start on May 3rd, I believe.
Yes.
So in 2 weeks, he'll be starting with us. I'm excited. He's an experienced HR person, and he's excited to be here. He was here on Friday. I met with him on Friday, and I took him around and introduced him to some people, including the individuals in HR, and I think they spent some time with him, and he's excited to be here. He can't wait to get here. So as soon as he comes in, we'll bring him in and introduce him to the commissioners and all the other staff. And one of the things Larry told me the other day is he wants to go out to all the departments and meet all the employees where they are, which I appreciated. So employees, he'll be coming your way, and he'll be coming out to visit all of you out on at your departments and on your sites. So thank you for those comments, and I think it'll be good for us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deb.
Susan Small, if you're listening, please come in. Deb Condo, if you see her, please tell her thank you.
And I know she just walked out the door, and Terry, you just said this, and it just went right out of my mind, but I just wanted to say, I did want to thank Deb Condo she's been serving in that interim role for a while. So Deb, if you're still listening, I'm sorry I didn't say that when you were in here, but I know she served in that role a few times, and she's done a great job, and she's looking forward to getting back into her role and have a director. So thank you, Deb. I hope you're still listening.
Thank you.
I don't think Susan has a staff comment today.
Okay.
If she would come in,
Right, here's the door. Let's see.
but do you have a comment? No comments today? Okay, thank you for that update on that.
Thank you.
All right. We're a little early, but citizens' participation, we do have one person scheduled. You want to see if he's out there early and bring Mr. Brown in early? Thank you.
Were there any other? I don't think there were.
That's the only one that,
There were not any other staff. The only other thing I want to mention is we don't have. There's not a meeting scheduled for next week, and we don't have to decide that right now. But
well, I forgot to ask you for staff. I
that's okay.
apologize.
So it's something that the board can think about. We can decide it today, or even after today. Okay. I'll do it.
Sir, please come in. Make yourself at home there. Oh, you sit right there at front.
Yep.
And please introduce yourself in the matter and welcome.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Stan Brown, Jr.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good
sir.
morning. I am a Washington County resident. I'm here to request the name of the Colonel Henry K. Douglas Drive off of Sharpsburg Pike be renamed as soon as possible. Colonel Henry K. Douglas was a local Confederate Army officer during the Civil War who fought for the values of the Confederacy, including the odious institution of slavery. We know the Confederacy exercised deplorable mistreatment of black people and in numerous cases condoned and perpetuated acts of lynchings, which were quite frankly criminal. In our current social climate of racial sensitivity and racial justice, the designation of the road as Colonel Henry K. Douglas should be promptly removed or changed as the name brings to mind these repulsive treatment of black people. This is an opportunity for this county government to show the citizens that it is conscientious and can make a social reparation in our community, particularly toward black people and people of color. Thank you.
Thank you,
you,
Mr.
sir.
Brown, appreciate it. Hearing no more comments?
Mr. Martirana, at some point, I'd just like to know how the road was named, how and why.
Okay, yeah, I don't think we know that, I don't think we know that information.
That would be
I think that-
interesting for me.
Yeah, and I think that part of the road, I believe, is a state road, I believe, the part that's in there now. Now, the
So-
county's gonna be building a road across 65.
So the state would have been instrumental in naming that road?
I don't know how it got named, but I'm thinking that's probably how it happened,
Yeah.
but, I know there was
I'd
some.
be interested in knowing how that all came about.
Okay, I mean, we can look into it. I know staff has looked into some of that, but I don't have any of that information, but,
Okay, thank you.
we can provide that information to you, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brown,
If I
appreciate your
could-
input.
Just a footnote, if I could be so kind to interject, I did contact Maryland State Roads, and they stated that I believe the county had something to do with naming of the road.
Okay,
We'll find out. Thank you.
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Could I
Brown.
expect some type of response or decision at some point in the future?
At this time, we're gonna take your comments under consideration, but we do appreciate and respect your thoughts.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
thank you very much.
You're welcome. I did skip the turn, Mr. Matrano, did you have any more staff comments?
The only thing I started to mention was, I think I mentioned to you last week that there's no Board of County Commissioner meeting scheduled for next week. So, as of right now, there isn't a meeting scheduled. If we determine at some point during this meeting or during the week that we need to meet, we could meet if you were available, but right now, there's no meeting scheduled. So I just want to remind everybody, there's no meeting scheduled for next week.
Okay, thank you.
So, but if-
Krista, John, anything else? I'm sorry.
I need to steal your mic, Dawn.
All right,
We're sharing. I just wanted to remind the citizen that citizens' participation has opened back up, and citizens would be required to submit any request to speak to myself at kwashco@washco-md.net, or you could call 240-313-2204, and those requests are due to me by 4 p.m. on Monday, the day before the meeting. So feel free to reach out, and we're permitting 3 citizens per meeting.
And Commissioners and John, I may add, as these numbers of COVID go back to normal, we're gonna reevaluate week by week, month by month, on how to
Right.
get back to normal,
I think,
correct?
yeah, I'll tell you that staff, so what we did is we went back and looked at the protocols that this board had used, back in the fall when you had citizen participation, and we looked at those, and, we talked to Tom Brown about those, and so right now, those are the same. But we're gonna continue to monitor that, and as the numbers improve, we'll transition into opening it, with the goal to open it completely back up. So we'll continue to monitor that on a weekly basis, but, probably in a few weeks, if the numbers go down, we may open it up to more. Right now, we opened it up to 3 today, we only had 1 sign up, so now that, maybe the word gets out a little bit more, we may have more at the next meeting, but, yeah, the goal is to open it back up to, any citizen who wants to come in and speak, so that's the goal. We'll continue to monitor.
I thank you and staff for helping to put this back into place. I think it is important we have citizen comment. I would just add, since we are limiting to 3 citizens, I hope that it would be appropriate that we make sure those issues are, again, just germane to what we do. From time to time, we have people that want to come in and talk about national issues, and
Right.
if we're just limited, I'd rather hear about things and comments from the citizens that we can control.
Okay.
If the opportunity or if the time slot is open, that's fine, I suppose, but I hope preference is given to those issues that we have some kind of say in.
Okay, it will be, it will be.
Thank you,
Okay, thank you.
everybody. Our next issue is public improvement bonds, and we're a little ahead of schedule, but folks, please come forward, introduce yourselves in the matter. Welcome. That looks like Lindsay Rader behind that, man.
Good morning.
Oh,
Nice to see you.
I recognize the
happy.
laughter.
Exactly. Mr. Martirano, nice to see you back with the county.
Lindsay, it's nice to see you again. Thank you.
Nice to see you, Mr. Burkett. Lindsay Rader, Funk and Bolton Bond Counsel to the county. There's a resolution before you this morning regarding the public improvement bonds of 2021. The county's budget included bond financing for up to at least $12,105,000 for certain infrastructure, public safety, public facility, environmental, and educational projects. As in past years, this resolution delegates to the Chief Financial Officer the authority to make adjustments to reflect any determinations made by the board to perhaps drop a project or to shift monies between projects before we actually sell the bonds. To, with the advice of the county's financial advisor, make adjustments to the preliminary principal amount of the bonds. While the bonds are authorized to be issued in a maximum of $12,105,000, in recent years, when bidders bid for the bonds, they tend to bid with premium, and enough premium that allows us to actually use some of that premium to reduce the par amount of the bonds the county actually has to issue while still covering all project costs that are intended by the resolution. In this year, the county's budget includes payment for costs of issuance relating to the bond issue from other funds rather than bond funds, except for the underwriter's discount, which is the amount payable to the successful bidder for the bonds and is determined by the premium bid for the bonds by that bidder over par. As in prior years, we are selling these bonds by public sale at competitive bid. Electronic bids only will be accepted through a accepted bidding platform. Currently, if you adopt the resolution, the sale is scheduled for May 4th, with closing on May 18th. The preliminary amortization schedule is set forth in the resolution. The resolution provides for the appointment of manufacturers and traders as your bond registrar and paying agent. They've been your bond registrar and paying agent for years. Standard provisions regarding transfer, exchange, book entry, form only registration of the bonds, the substantially final form of the bond, and for execution of the bond are set forth in the resolution. One of the most important things are these bonds are backed by a pledge of the full faith and credit and unlimited taxing power of the county. To the extent other available revenues are lawfully available to pay debt service on the bonds, you can use those other monies in the first instance. There are tax covenants because the intention is these bonds will be tax exempt for federal and Maryland income tax purposes, and the county makes covenants to take the actions necessary to maintain the tax exemption of the bonds. The resolution provides for the allocation of the bonds to one of the authorizing acts passed by the Maryland General Assembly. The resolution provides for the finalization of the preliminary official statement. A draft form is in your package for the finalization and approval of the final official statement, which contains disclosure regarding the bonds after the sale, contains covenants of the county to make continuing disclosure on an annual basis of certain financial and operating information, and the notice of occurrence of any events. You have been making those covenants on an annual basis for years through the public sale of your bonds. And that's the overview. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner, comments?
Yeah, I guess, so originally we were going to borrow 22 million?
That is correct. There were some adjustments made, mainly to self-supported bonds for water and sewer, because the timing of the project was not until a later period. So instead of issuing bonds now, we said, let's wait and issue them next year to make sure that we actually do have to issue them, because a couple of them are being applied for the Maryland Water Quality Loan right now, and if we can secure that, we'll pay less interest. We'll get a better deal to do some of those projects. So we did delay that, and you'll see self-supported bonds in the 22 budget have increased the same amount. So that's the major change.
So basically, that $12 million is what we supported.
12 million of it is tax supported. The 105 is self-supported debt, so probably related to solid waste or water quality. And that is what was approved in the budget for fiscal year 21, voted on last May.
Okay.
And the good news is, like Lindsay mentioned, because of the premium that we expect to get, the par amount actually won't be that 12.1 million. It should be closer to 10.8. We don't know that number until the sale, but the good news is that we'll get that premium and we'll be able to reduce that par amount a little bit.
It's good news.
Yeah.
Commissioners, any other comments, or is,
Can you discuss some of the uses? I'm looking at the application of proceeds, $6,026,000 for infrastructure and so on. What infrastructure projects do you have pegged towards for this bond?
The infrastructure includes Halfway Boulevard bridges, Kiefer Road Bridge, Frog Eye Road Culvert, pavement maintenance and rehab program, Eastern Boulevard widening Phase 2, several phases for Professional Boulevard extended phase, and Wright Road.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Absolutely.
commissioners, any more comments? Is there a recommended motion to approve the resolution?
How does this differ from previous years?
It's very in line with previous years. I mean, we generally issue about 12 million per year in tax-supported bonds. The self-supported bonds that we issue do fluctuate, based on enterprise fund needs. So that amount does tend to fluctuate, but generally we do issue about 12 million annually for tax-supported bonds.
And say you wouldn't do it, what would happen?
If we wouldn't do it, well, certain projects that have already begun, I think we should keep those in mind, because if they've already started and they have previous bond money allocated to them, there is a time frame in which we need to spend the bonds and complete the projects. And so I think that's something that we would have to consider in that decision if we did not issue the bonds. Other than that, potentially delay the project if it hasn't already started.
Right.
Yeah.
I motion to approve the resolution.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Is there any other comments? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I vote.
And this was all approved with the support of last year's budget.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. Next up, welcome back. Supplemental resolution reallocating a portion of the par amount for public improvement bonds 2019. Folks, please introduce yourself in the matter.
Again, Lindsay Rader, Funkin Bolton, Bond Counsel to the county. The county issued public improvement bonds of 2019 in the original aggregate principal amount of $13,310,000 for a variety of those projects. $550,000 of the par amount of those bonds were allocated to a project known as Colonel Henry K. Douglas Drive Extended Phase 1. There were unexpected cost savings achieved with respect to that project, and so the county has unspent bond proceeds. And as Ms. Graves just mentioned, when you have bond proceeds, you typically want to work very hard to get them spent within 3 years of the original date of issuance. The county has another project that it is working on known as the Police, Fire, and Emergency Services Training Facility Project. And the county, the board, voted in October of 2020 through a budget adjustment, to reallocate $496,631 of the 2019 bonds originally allocated to the Henry K. Douglas Drive project to that training facility project. When the board approved the budget adjustment in October, it was noted that a supplemental resolution would be required at a later date. This supplemental resolution is to carry out what was anticipated by that budget adjustment already approved by the board. And so it just goes through a lot of recitals, and it is now reallocating that par amount of the bonds. And because this project was not originally included in the list of projects for which the 2019 bonds were issued, the president or the vice president of the board and the chief financial officer are authorized to sign a supplemental tax certificate, just making certain covenants and representations, because those 2019 bonds were issued on a tax-exempt basis.
So they're dedicated for the training center. And long and short of, they're dedicated to the training center.
Correct.
My motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, I have first and second. Any other questions, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Nice to see you all again. Nice to
Thank
see
you
people
for
in
your,
person.
thank you for your work. Commissioners, we're a little early, but our next agenda item is intergovernmental cooperative purchase, and that would be Brandy and David Hayes, if they're right there, and you're listening, please come in. Sarah, if you see them, send them in. Hey.
Personal protect.
Folks, welcome. Please introduce yourself in the matter.
Brandy Nagelmeyer in the purchasing department.
David Hayes, Division of Emergency Services.
The first recommendation I have for you this morning is the intergovernmental cooperative purchase, INTG 20-0058, personal protective equipment for the Department of Emergency Services. Move to authorize by resolution the approval of the purchase of 35 sets of professional protective equipment for the Division of Emergency Services with Whitmire Public Safety out of Williamsport, Maryland, at the contracted unit prices based on the state of New Jersey contract. The total cost for the 35 sets is $85,296.75. The public law, local law of Washington County grants authorization for the county to procure goods and services under contracts entered into by another government entity. The county will benefit with a direct cost savings in purchasing these pieces of clothing because of the economies of scale the contract has leveraged. The turnout gear will be purchased to assist the outfitting of our first response responders throughout the county. The annual program that has been supported through the general fund budget for this department. And we're just looking for approval to purchase the 35 sets and to utilize the state of New Jersey's contract.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
I have first and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dave.
Next up, contract renewal, leachate hauling services. Brandy, please introduce yourself. Is Dave Mason joining you today? There's Dave Mason. Brandy, please introduce everyone and yourselves and the subject.
Brandy Nagelmeyer in the purchasing department.
Dave Mason, Deputy Director in charge of solid waste.
The next recommendation I have for you this morning is the contract renewal leachate hauling services for county landfills. Move to renew the contract for leachate hauling at county landfills with AC&T out of Hagerstown, Maryland, per the rates indicated in our letter dated March 4th, 2021. AC&T is requesting an approximate amount of 5% increase to their current rate. On June 9th, 2019, the board originally awarded the contract for the subject services to AC&T out of Hagerstown, Maryland, at the rates indicated above, based on a total lump sum bid formula. The contract was for a period of 1 year. It commenced on July 1st, 2019, with the option for the county to renew up to 2 additional consecutive 1-year terms, this being the final term of the contract. The scope services to be provided by the contractor includes loading, hauling, delivery, and uploading of leachate to Valacor at the Department of Water Quality's Conococheague wastewater treatment plant. The leachate is transported from the Rush Road landfill, Rubble landfill, Old City County, and 40 West landfill. Funds are budgeted in the solid waste general fund for these services.
Just a question.
Mhm.
Have we always priced this on a per gallon basis? I thought in years past we've done just a contract and we were given a hard dollar amount rather than a per gallon.
No, it's per gallon. It's always been, as long as I've been associated with it.
Okay. You've been associated with it longer than I have, so.
So there's no upfront cost, just based on per gallon.
Correct.
So, you have Rush Road, then you have the rubble landfill. Which one's that?
Over by the softball fields there off of Kemp's Mill.
Heinsberg?
Over by the
Oh, Kemp's
Kemp's
Mill.
Mill. Yeah.
And then you have the Old City County landfill.
That's the Hagerstown City landfill that we took
Okay.
over in the 80s.
And then you have, of course, the West landfill. So, based on each one of those, how do I know the cost of each landfill? I mean, how many gallons did you have hauled out of Rush Road last year?
Rush was probably, we were in that 5 million gallon a year mark.
So we paid for 5 million gallons last year,
Yeah, it's around that number. I don't have the exact figures in front of me,
or
but
approximately?
yes.
And then how about, do you know the rubble landfill?
Rubble is around 2 million. City County is 8 to 10 million. And 40 West is in the 15 million range.
And we had all of those hauled out last year in those approximate amounts.
Yes, yes.
Okay. 5, 2, 8 to 10. Okay, and then you said did you say 15 million?
15 from 40 West, yes. And those numbers vary every year based on weather and all other
So
circumstances.
it's just interesting to know the numbers and.
Yeah.
Hey, Commissioners, any more comments?
Yeah, and then do you know the total dollar amount we spent last year?
Not off the top of my head, because we also
Just-
include treatment in that.
Yeah,
Treatment at Valacor is
just
around
email
5
it to me
cents.
if you don't mind.
Yeah, I
I'd
can
just be
get you
interested
those.
in knowing how much we're spending on leachate.
Yeah, I can get you those.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Motion to move to renew.
Motion to renew.
Is there a second?
Second.
First and second, any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Brandy, I'm gonna back up and go to the electrician services. I skipped over them, I
That's all
apologize.
happened.
But thank you, Dave Mason.
Thank you.
Please continue and introduce the matter.
Okay, Brandy Noggle, Buyer and Purchasing Department. The last recommendation I have for you this morning is the contract renewal PUR 1417 for electrician services for county facilities. Move to renew the contract for electrician services to county facilities with Cube Electric out of Williamsport, Maryland, per the rates indicated in their letter dated March 20th, 2021. Cube is requesting an approximately 4% increase above their current rates. On June 9th, 2019, the board originally awarded this contract to Cube based on a total base sum formula. The contract was awarded for a period of 1 year with 4 consecutive additional 1-year renewals. This is the second renewal for Cube. Each department has budgeted for the increase.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a first and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are ahead of schedule. I think Susan's up next. She's aware of that, so Susan, if you're available.
I know Susan Buchanan was sitting out there.
Good morning, everyone. Please introduce yourself and the matter. Thank you.
Good morning. Susan Buchanan, Director of Grant Management.
And Susan Small, Director of Business Development.
We're here this morning requesting a motion to approve acceptance
of Relief Act funds, providing assistance to the restaurant industry, accommodations and lodging industry, and assistance for businesses setting up online sales and telework, and execution of the related grant agreements with the Department of Commerce. The State of Maryland's Relief Act provides funds to assist business sectors hardest hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. The funds are being distributed by the Department of Commerce to local jurisdictions to provide grants to eligible local businesses with the goal of promoting stabilization and economic recovery. Grants provided are as follows: restaurant and beverage food service industry, $550,721.98. Accommodations and lodging industry, $250,328.17. Businesses setting up online sales or telework, $12,516.41. Upon acceptance of grant funds, the Department of Business Development will distribute the funds to eligible businesses through individual grant applications created for each program. The Department of Grant Management has reviewed the grant agreements, and there are no local matching funds required or any other unusual requirements or conditions associated with the grants. The funds must be distributed to eligible grantees by June 30th, 2021. Department of Business Development will utilize up to 10% of the grant awards for the administrative costs of the program implementation. I'll turn it over to Susan to discuss the specifics of what her department will be doing.
So we've created 4 different grant programs similar to ones that we've done in the past. They're scheduled to release May 3rd, because one of the stipulations of the new grants is that we provide preference to those who have not received similar funding from the state relief grants. So we want to ensure that we have plenty of time to reach the far corners of the businesses who have not yet been provided any grant funding, so that we can do that and help them get their documentation in order to submit. So our goal is to submit these by start accepting them by May 3rd, and we'll leave it open for 2 weeks for submittal. And then details for the submission are going to be on the application, which will be on our website. We have worked with PR and our website designers to create a portal sort of location for folks to go on and fill out the application online this time, which we've been working on to try and get implemented since we've had so many of these programs to do. It makes it much easier. So with that, I'll take any questions or concerns.
For those, go ahead. All right, thank you. For those who can't do it online, they can call your office and we'll...
Yes, my staff will be there to help, just like we have in the past. We can take them.
And that number will be publicized so they can...
Yes.
Did you mention the limits? I might have missed that.
The limits on each grant?
Yeah.
We did not. So the first one for the accommodations is an award of up to $25,000 per applicant. The food and beverage providers is an award of up to $12,000, and the online sales and teleworking grant is up to $5,000 per applicant.
Susan, either Susan, I suppose.
Yeah, you get a lot of attention that way.
Yeah. The answer to that last question was helpful. I wonder, the businesses setting up online sales telework, up to $5,000. I don't want to trivialize the amount of $12,000, but it looks like at most you're going to be able to help 2.5 businesses.
I mean, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, just is that the only way we can disperse this money for that particular grant in increments of 5,000? Is there a way we could help more businesses? Can the money be used more of a training tool for businesses to maybe come and attend a seminar? That way we can open up that opportunity and spend that money on the greatest number of businesses possible.
Yes, and we fully expect for everybody to go for the max, but they do have to be able to provide documentation that shows the need, and they are responsible for holding on to that in case there is an audit by the state. So if they ask for a specific amount, we have to be able to confirm that with our application. And so to answer your second question, kind of related to that, it's our understanding that there is another potential amount coming from Governor Hogan's Relief Act for this specific the specific grant program. So I do foresee us having to do this one again, because we only received 12, and then I don't want to minimalize it, but you know, it is a lot. So we want to be able to help as many businesses as we can. So while the max amount set by the state was 5,000, I think we'll work with these businesses to make sure that they can actually account for that 5,000 if they should apply for that max amount. Yeah. I mean, we thought about making it 12, $1,000 or something like that. We try and take out the subjectivity of each one, because really it's up to them to hold on to the documentation for any audit, not the county.
It seems like with these grant programs, and it's, again, not a bad thing, most businesses apply for the full amount, whatever's available, and they can, you know, usually justify that full amount. I was just looking at it as an opportunity to help more businesses. It's just when the grants narrow down to just 2 businesses in full, with that full dollar amount, might there be another way to include more opportunities to help businesses?
We definitely consider that also.
Same with the accommodations and lodging. It looks like we will be helping if the max is given out to each applicant. And again, history shows us we give the max out most of the time. We would only be able to help 10 different hotels or motels or bed and breakfasts.
So, and one thing to keep in mind with these 3 new grants, preference has to be given to those who have not received. So that being said, we had only a couple dozen receive out of the last who were qualified. So there are only a handful of qualified lodging providers that haven't received yet. So we want to make sure that they get funded first. That's why we went ahead and did the max, because the last lodging grant was $24,184, I think was the number. So it was almost at that 25 threshold anyway. So given the fact that a lot of these are for preference to people who have not been awarded yet, we want to make sure that they have the opportunity, like the others had in the last grant rounds, for that max award. So while it's not solely folks who have not received before, they just get a preference. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
So does that mean, you said a preference, so does that mean someone that's applied before that's received could possibly still get in front of a business that has not received?
I wouldn't say that they would get in front unless the other business who has not received is not qualified by another guideline. There are qualifications in addition to the preference of not receiving grant money before. Of course, they have to be in good standing with the state, and they have to be an incorporated business located in Washington County. There's a handful of other things that come with this. And so that's why it's so important that we're hands-on with each applicant, if we can be. I mean, we try and make it as easy as possible, so that it's
Susan, pardon me, there'll be a deadline too,
Yeah.
correct? So when the deadline hits, you're gonna evaluate, and preference or priority may be given to the ones who haven't.
They will go to the front of the line.
So if there's anybody who has received, they met the deadline, they too may be considered.
Yep.
And the monies will be awarded what date?
I don't know what the exact award date will be, but it will be 2 weeks from May 3rd that we'll close it, and then we'll review everything.
Okay.
So it could be another 2 weeks after that.
And you're looking for a motion to approve the acceptance of these funds?
Yes.
Commissioners, any more comments?
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Next up, Department of Housing and Community Development. Welcome back. Please introduce yourself in the matter.
Susan Buchanan, Director Office Grant Management.
And Susan Small, Director of Business Development.
We're requesting a motion to approve the submittal of a nonprofit recovery grant application to the Department of Housing and Community Development, and then accept funding as awarded and executed associated grant agreements. The Department of Housing and Community Development has been authorized to distribute Maryland Recovery Now funds to local governments to provide grants to nonprofit organizations with demonstrated need related to the coronavirus pandemic. Washington County has been allocated $499,692. The county must submit an application describing the process that the county plans to utilize to distribute the funds. Upon submission of this application and a grant award, the funds will be distributed by the Department of Business Development to local businesses via a grant application process. The Office of Grant Management's reviewed these grant documents. There are no matching requirements or unusual circumstances. The funds must be distributed to eligible grantees by September 1st, 2021, and the nonprofit recipients must expend their awarded funds by December 31st, 2021. Department of Business Development will utilize up to 10% of the award for administrative costs. And I'll turn it over to Susan again.
This one is gonna fall in line with the others in terms of timeline, and it's a max award of up to $25,000 for a nonprofit organization, 501c3, 6, or 9.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
A first and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next will be the ConAgra Foods Packaged Foods Conditional Loan, and I believe Susan Small, that is you. Please introduce yourself again and the matter.
All right, good morning again, Commissioners. Susan Small, Director of the Department of Business Development. Today I'm here with a motion to approve the county's execution of the modification documents, acknowledging ConAgra as a successor in interest to Pinnacle, the obligor to the county with all of the rights, duties, and obligations set forth in the first county loan documents, and to approve the county's execution of the documents awarding the second county loan to ConAgra as successor in interest to Pinnacle. Pinnacle has recently been acquired by ConAgra. The county's conditional loan document should now be amended and restated to reflect the change. On April 12th of 2016, the Commissioners adopted the resolution endorsing 2 conditional loans to Pinnacle, one from the Maryland Economic Development, Assistance Authority Fund, otherwise known as MEDAF. By the same resolution, the board also approved 2 conditional loans from the county to Pinnacle in the same amounts on essentially the same terms and conditions of the MEDAF loan. The corporate acquisition and restructuring the business entities in fall of 2018 and 19, Pinnacle was dissolved and its operations were assigned to ConAgra. So with the board's approval, we're requesting for the county's execution of the documents to change, to reflect the change in the existing loan documents and to complete the transactions for the second loans. The county and Commerce should amend and restate their respective loan documents with ConAgra, which has assumed all the rights, indebtedness, liabilities, and obligations of Pinnacle. ConAgra desires to receive the second county loan, which will be in the amount of $100,000 as determined by applicable provisions of the loan agreement. The second county loan must close before Commerce will close the MEDAF loan. So the alternative is to deny the motion to change just the name of the company, essentially.
Just a quick question. Who pays for all that fund? Because it costs money to do that.
To change it?
Yeah.
I guess it would be the attorney involved with Pinnacle.
Yeah, we've been working on it in-house. This has been a project that's been ongoing for some time. It's just in the middle of this transaction. It was acquired by ConAgra.
They added a second phase to their line, which is why they requested this loan.
So all of the terms of the original agreement with Pinnacle were honored up until the sale of the property or the transfer of the property?
Yes.
So the terms are going to remain the same?
Yes, all the terms remain the same, just the name of the company changed.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the number of employees and all of that there?
So when they first put the line on, it was an expansion of, I want to say like 250,000 square feet and another 100 jobs, 100 plus jobs. It was a significant expansion.
So they've hired all those people?
Yes, they have met their job requirements.
Okay.
Yes.
That was my question, actually.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you very much. Susan, you're up again. Please introduce yourself and the matter.
Susan Small, Director of the Department of Business Development. I'm here with some amendments to the Vasel Boulevard roadway improvements and reconstruction. The motion is to adopt the proposed resolution, restating with amendments, and resolution with the number endorsement of the MEDAF bridge loan, which is the Maryland Economic Development Assistance Authority Fund. The Maryland Department of Commerce requires that the county's repayment of the MEDAF bridge loan must be guaranteed by the county's full faith and credit. The provision must be included in the resolution endorsing the loan. On October 13th of 2020, the Board of County Commissioners adopted this resolution endorsing a bridge loan in the amount of $2 million from the Maryland Economic Development Assistance Authority Fund to the Board of County Commissioners. The county would use the loan funds for eligible project costs related to the roadway improvements and reconstruction of Vasel Boulevard to support the larger development plan in that area recently undertaken by North Point Development. On March 30th of 2021, the board approved the establishment of the new project budget for $2.7 million for the payment of invoices, and $2 million of which is the MEDAF bridge loan. The Department of Commerce has advised county staff that the county's repayment of the MEDAF bridge loan must be guaranteed by the county's full faith and credit. The proposed resolution restates the county's endorsement of the MEDAF bridge loan and pledges the county's full faith and credit to the loan's repayment, all effective as of October 13th, 2020, the date on which the MEDAF bridge loan was originally endorsed.
Commissioners, comments, thoughts?
So this is, we've actually already voted on and approved the $2 million.
Yes,
bridge loan.
that part was finished. We're just changing, or adding that language that we're pledging the county's full faith and credit to the loan repayment.
Why didn't they require that originally?
I guess it was just maybe an addition as we work through the documentation.
I mean, Commissioners, if you'll recall, this is a public-private partnership with the City of Hagerstown, the county, and North Point. The county's obligation was to contribute $2.7 million to the reconstruction of Wasel Boulevard. It was always the intention that $700,000 of that would be funded out of the general fund, with $2 million of the $2.7 million obligation being provided by Commerce in the form of this loan that has very favorable interest rates. So this is a housekeeping matter that effectuates and implements what has long been the plan.
Just curious, what is the interest rate? Do you know offhand?
I don't know.
That's fine.
I want to say it's something close to 1%. But
Yeah, I know. I just know we've already supported this as a full body.
The motion, is there a second?
Second.
First and a second, any further questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, 5-0.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Commissioners, we're way ahead of schedule for the next item. Do you want to proceed or take a recess? Your thoughts?
I'd keep it going if someone's ready.
Okay, everybody okay with that?
Yep, that's good.
All right. Next, fiscal year 2022 budget presentation. Sarah, if you're listening, come on down. Sarah, good morning. Please introduce yourself in the matter.
Good morning, Commissioners. Sarah Greaves, Chief Financial Officer, here to discuss fiscal year 22 budget. I have prepared a slideshow for you today in response to information from last meeting last week. The goal of the presentation is to provide to you a clear understanding of where the budget is allocated and the impacts of a decrease and any other considerations. Slide, please. The impact of reducing the tax rate from 3.2% to 2.8% is approximately $17.1 million. This is made up of about $11 million related to income tax and $6.1 million related to disparity grant. Next slide. While the full impact of 17.1, while the full impact is 17.1, the impact on the 22 budget is 5.5 million. And this is because the tax reduction would be effective in January of 2022. And so we would realize half a year revenue at the higher rate, and then the later half at the lower rate. And we do feel like we would still receive the disparity grant. Next slide. This slide addresses some things that have been stated about, why can't we just, redo fiscal year 20 or redo fiscal year 21's budget? Like, why can't we just budget exactly what we did before and repeat that? And I just wanted to mention, I took a look at some of the expenditures that we have in the 22 budget that were not in the 21 budget. This does not include any firefighters. It doesn't include any future costs. It's just what we have today. And I thought it was important to note that, there's about 11 million in additional recurring costs that were added over the existing budget that we have today. Next slide, please. The pie chart in front of you shows you how the budget is allocated for fiscal year 22. Board of Education makes up 42% of the budget. The next highest category includes wages and benefits, and then outside agencies at 11%. Next slide, please.
Sarah, I've asked them to make this other slides larger to, on that one. I can't see that there. I can't. You can, but I can't there.
Sorry.
I need.
You have the wrong glasses.
You got any binoculars?
Oh, I can't see. I can't see it.
I can't.
Yeah. That's all right.
Yeah, that's okay. There you go. That helps. All right. Thank you.
Better?
Yeah.
The slide in front of you breaks down the percent of our budget, and it's important to understand that, when you think about $254 million as our budget, when we think about making adjustments to the budget, we have to consider that we do have Board of Education appropriation that is $105.8 million, and that is set by law, so it can't withstand an adjustment. Also, we have debt payments of about $15 million as well to think about. So the remaining budget, just less those two items, is about $131 million.
Don't mean to interrupt you, but I thought you said our debt service was about $10,400,000 a couple of weeks ago.
$10 million is probably the amount of principal being paid off. The remaining $5 million is related to interest. So we pay off about $10 million a year in principal, but we have total costs of about $15 million. That's the difference. Next slide, please.
Can you go back to the slide you just had?
This one?
Oh, I'm looking there. All I see is you there.
Yeah.
So what you said there, right now on this slide, we're taking cuts out of 131, right?
Yes, if we'll make reductions, yeah, because we can't really touch the Board of Ed or the debt payments.
Okay.
Okay?
Sarah,
Mm-hmm.
I apologize, I didn't ask this sooner, but I thought about it. What is the transfers to other funds?
Transfers to other funds of about $12.5 million. I have a slide for that, which will show what we transfer, but mainly the general fund transfers money over to the other funds for their general operating costs. A large portion of that is related to the highway transfer. So the highways budget is a little bit over 11 million, I think, but 9.5 million comes from the general fund. So that 9.5 is represented in that 12.5.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Are we good to move to the next slide?
Yes.
Okay. This is really just a slide based on, some of the things to consider as we think about reducing, if we don't reduce outside agencies, if we don't reduce public safety, it further reduces the amount that we basically start with as we think about some of the reductions that we could make. And so taking out public safety and outside agencies reduces it to about a $95 million budget. Next slide. This county operations, that's part of our part of the categories that I shared in an earlier slide. I just think it's kind of interesting if you think about, you know, county operations and what makes up that budget of $16.5 million. Now, this does not include any wages and benefits. This is really just those core operating costs. If you take out public safety, utilities, software, and insurance, you know, that makes up close to 11 million of that total. So, you know, the other costs that, you know, could be included in operations would be maybe office supplies, vehicle maintenance, things like that. So I just think that's important to consider as we move forward and think about, you know, what the county's operating on. Next slide, please. This just shows appropriations to outside agencies of 27 million. I did put fire and rescue volunteer services in this slide. I just want to make sure you're aware of that. Not all of that goes to one entity. You know, a lot of that goes out to different companies. And so it is here in a lump sum, but I just want to make sure you're aware of that. Next slide, please. Here is a slide related to the transfers of 12.5 million that we've recently covered. 9.5 million goes to highway and about 1 million to transit. And then you can see there's other funds that receive general fund dollars as well. The utility administration fund, which is receiving or projected to receive about 425 for fiscal year 22. That's a significant increase over last year. And that is related to 2 stormwater technicians that we've spoken about before. That is supported by the general fund, even though it's in the utility fund, which is part of the water sewer funds. Next slide, please. Future cost considerations. We're all familiar with the SAFER grant. The P25 lease, you know, I'm not really sure when that lease will come online. They have to do a lot of work prior to that being realized, but that is related to public safety and the towers that we have here in the county for communication. Certainly we've heard before wage concerns related to the minimum wage mandate. I just recently heard something about reduction in highway user revenue. That's not something that's guaranteed. You know, anything at the state can change from year to year, but there is a sunset clause right now for fiscal year 24, and they were trying to get that removed, but they were unsuccessful, so it's something to consider. And then of course we know, you know, every year we face additional state mandates. This year we had to increase our appropriation to the election board for cost to provide a second and third early voting site. So, you know, that increased cost by close to $80,000. And then long-term planning as we move forward, making sure that we care for our infrastructure. Next slide. I've heard a lot about the 20 and 21 surplus, and I just wanted to take a couple minutes to address some of the things. Now I'm not going to sit here in front of you and say none of the surplus is, you know, recurring or, you know, what have you. But I do want to address that, you know, the 20 surplus of about 13 million. We've heard that number a lot, and you know, there were some extenuating circumstances to consider. There were $3 million in savings related to health insurance, and that was mainly related to the closures and healthcare delays during the early parts of the pandemic. We were over budget for income tax by about $4 million. At the time, we thought at least half of that was related to the unemployment stimulus, so maybe not all of it, but about half of it. We learned later that the state has projected $3.9 million to reduce the county's income tax in 21 for over-distribution in 2020. Of course, we had the hiring freeze, and then we had some programs that, you know, were not implemented, but that are implemented now. So I think that that's important to understand as well. The EMS for the $1 million, that's for the health insurance reimbursement that you see there. And then the current year, obviously, you know, we've already had a $10 million adjustment that we've moved money to capital for. So the 21 budget, as we've spoken about before, was written down to account for potentially 20% unemployment. We are following the state's estimates, and you know, that just was never realized. And so we did see higher income tax come in that was that was higher than budget, but in line with what we anticipated prior to the pandemic. And then the other factor to consider is most recently in February, we had a very large distribution of income tax, about 9 million over budget. And the state sent a comment about that and said that, you know, those were really pass-through entities that were making bulk payments in the fourth quarter. And these payments are generally made quarterly. And so what the county can ascertain from that is that we may face a change in timing of payments and when we receive those payments and those distributions from the state. So just something to consider.
On FY '20, surplus 13 million. Okay, does that carry over to a surplus of 11 million in '21, correct? Because surplus in '20 would, if the health insurance picked up, we'd lose 3 million of that, get called back 3 or 4 million of income tax, hiring freeze would, who knows where that's going, and we're still gonna we did $1 million TMS, and I think they were scheduled for another $1 million.
I don't think I would compare them next to each other because there are other circumstances that we face in '21.
Okay.
You know, I wouldn't necessarily draw that comparison, but what I would draw from this slide is just that, you know, there are a lot of circumstances that, you know, can create a surplus. And if they're recurring, you know, like if our income tax is coming in higher and, you know, we weren't worried that it was related to the stimulus on unemployment or something like that, that may be something that we could say, hey, you know, this is a surplus and let's use this to project our future budgets, stuff like that. So, you know, there could be some of that, and it's hard to know because the income tax distribution that comes from the state, I mean, they don't give us a lot of information related to that. How much is unemployment? I had to find that out from the fiscal note that they provided. So, you know, I wouldn't compare them side by side.
So right now, then I'll concentrate on '21, approximately 11 million, and you're explaining where that came from below, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I just want to know the bottom end. Keep going. I'm good.
Okay. All right. Okay, next slide. I think I'm good with this one. All right, North Point Development. We've talked a lot about economic development recently. You know, we just heard a presentation on the county investment of $2.7 million, so I won't go into that in too much detail. We do anticipate $120 million in investment and approximately 800 jobs. The county property tax revenue generation on $120 million is approximately 1.1 million, but this development does have the enterprise zone tax credit, so that's going to reduce the amount of money that the county actually receives in new revenue, and it's still substantial increase of 682,000. So that's phenomenal. And I do apologize. I believe I used the county's rate with this, not the differential rate. So I think I used 948 instead of 823 here. I'm just thinking about that, but it just doesn't really make a material impact.
So North Point will provide 672, approximately.
682,000 in new revenue for property tax alone. That's what's projected. And the jobs related to that, I mean, sometimes you have to make assumptions for this because, you know, you're not sure how many people are going to live in the county. You're not sure, you know, if there's an average wage of $18 to $20 an hour or $40,000 annually. You know, is that the amount that they're actually going to be taxed on, or is it going to be reduced because of tax deductions and stuff like that, which often happens. But, you know, you have to start somewhere. And so the income tax generation for those jobs is anticipated around 672,000. That is based on those assumptions.
So those figures are based on a leasehold, not a sale, right? Now we get less.
Yes.
If it's a sale or transfer, we get more money, but North Point doesn't sell to Amazon, correct?
Well, I'm not sure entirely. I'd have to call on Susan Small for that conversation, but.
Well, we get a lot less money if it was a leasehold than we would if it was a sale. If they transferred ownership to Amazon, we get more money. If they didn't, we get less money. Is that correct? I mean, I think that's correct.
Well, the property value, you know, it is what it is, right?
You're
So
meaning recordation.
You get transfer and recordation.
Transfer and recordation.
You're talking about
Yeah.
recordation and transfer
Like
tax,
a
not
sale.
property tax.
Trammell
Sale, you
Crowe
get
sold
transfer and recordation tax.
to somebody, Trammell Crowe built $75 million in construction, but then they sold for $139 million.
That's right, we got
So
recordation tax for
That's
that.
every time the Valley Mall or Prime Outlets
And I
would
think
sell.
North Point's a leasehold, so we wouldn't get that.
That's probably true. And see, and then again, that's one-time money. It's not recurring. And so I think what my focus was on this slide was more of a recurring nature. Sorry, I wasn't
Okay.
understanding where you were
That's good.
coming with
I
that.
just wanted to know what that figure was based.
Yeah.
If anything was built into that, so.
That's not in here.
Okay, that's fine.
But regardless of which direction, it's more money.
Absolutely.
Once they're up and yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Once they're up and running, yes.
'Cause you're
And
showing-
they'll be completing construction pretty soon, I believe. Now, that doesn't mean all 800 jobs are gonna come on right away, but it does mean that, you know, we do anticipate them. Absolutely.
So you're showing property tax income and income from the income tax too, right? So those are two different.
Yes. Total about 1.4 million
1.4 million.
in additional recurring revenue.
Right.
Yes. Next slide, please. And most recently, I think we've all heard about the American Rescue Plan Act. The county is going to receive $29.3 million in that from those funds. We are waiting to get more information from the government on how to use those funds. It's very vague right now. All it has really stated is that they can be used to respond to and prepare for COVID-19 activities. We're going to need a little bit more direction than that. We do have staff having discussions about those funds, but once we get the additional language, we plan to bring a staff recommendation for your consideration, but we don't have that today.
I'll just say that it's my understanding that the Treasury Department will be issuing guidelines, hopefully by the end of April. That's what they're shooting for. So once the Treasury Department issues additional guidelines, which will help us interpret what the actual statute or what the actual act says, we'll have a better idea where we can spend the money. So, and we should be getting at least half of that money sometime before the end of May, I believe.
Yes, half this year and half next year, 12 months later.
So where does this money come from?
This money's coming from the American Rescue Plan Act. It is
Federal.
one-time money, so, you know, some of the things they said it could be used for, maybe water sewer infrastructure or COVID-19 activities, business stabilization.
Yeah, I mean, I think economic development and those kind of things can probably.
Capital improvement.
But you couldn't buy dump
But not
trucks
all.
or land or
No,
anything.
you couldn't buy anything that,
Depends on if they're convertible or not. You can convert them to, and I don't know, just possibly convert them to something to go out and deal with COVID issues.
right, maybe if there was a direct COVID-related occurrence. I would say infrastructure would be more water, sewer, or potentially roads, but I'm not even sure. I don't want to speak too far ahead of myself with that without having the guidance.
Right, and there's some references to broadband, but I think
Yes.
it was Commissioner Kiefer that brought it up too. But I think there's other money that's coming from federal and state government for broadband. So, you know, we have to try to factor all that in. We don't want to spend this money on broadband if we're going to get other money for broadband. So, because one of the things we initially thought was, you know, this is a huge amount of money that we could put into broadband, but because broadband's an expensive thing for some parts of our county. But if there's other money coming from broadband, we'd rather spend that money and not this money. So,
Absolutely.
so I'm hoping when the Treasury Department issues additional guidance, obviously we'll provide that to you when it comes, that we'll have a better idea about how we can spend that money. So, and we have to spend it by the end of 24, I believe.
24, yep, December of 24,
So-
right now, unless they
change
extend it, like,
Well,
right.
yeah. What'll happen, we'll get to the end of that and they'll end up extending it while we're
Right.
scrambling.
It
to
could
finish.
happen.
So in addition to this has nothing to do with President Biden's 1.3 or 1.7 trillion dollars that he's getting ready to, has nothing to do with that.
That's a separate,
That's
So we're
separate.
going to hopefully get a substantial amount of money out of that also.
We hope so.
Okay.
We hope that if, we've had some of our representatives reach out to us and we've provided them information about some projects that we think would be good for those monies, but I don't know when that's going to come out. And I will say that our local municipalities are getting money under that American Rescue Plan too. So
Yes.
Yeah, you said on some of our projects, is it 1.3 or 1.7 trillion? I think it's 1.3 trillion. 1.3 trillion is what President Biden's administration is looking at for disbursement across the country.
Okay.
So, and you just referenced projects, that you're starting to think about some projects, and could we get a list of those projects that
Sure.
we're looking into for
Sure.
some of that?
And again, you know,
And I know
it is over $1 trillion. Not all of that's going to infrastructure, even though I think they're calling it an infrastructure project. I don't believe all of those are going to there. So I think, so sure, we're starting to look in those projects too, about what we can, what we may be able to get money for.
Okay.
So, and that's of course all made federal money too, so we'll have to, some of those projects, we've already been looking at federal money, but, okay, so any money that's out there, we're looking to get our share. But they all, as you all know, they all come with limitations, and we just need to make sure that we spend the right money at the right place. And that's why you start balancing, or not balancing, but start to look at what certain monies can be spent for, because you don't want to spend money over here when we might get other money over here. So.
If I could just comment, not about the American Rescue Plan Act monies, but on the previous slide, the North Point development, we were estimating 800 jobs, 75% of which would be county jobs. I believe that is just for the Amazon portion of the development at North Point. I'm just looking at a very recent Herald Mail article where the company officials are estimating 1,500 jobs. So just I think worth pointing out that may be attributable only to the Amazon portion, or one phase or one building being built, but there's several different individual projects being built.
I've heard that 1,500 before too, and last week we had some of our rating agency calls, and I think that the 800 is related to 3 buildings, but not the last, and I'm not sure what's in store for that.
Just what the North Point was sharing with the Herald Mail, and I guess that's when some state officials came up.
Okay.
1,500 jobs.
Next slide. Oh, are we done with this slide? Okay.
All right.
So I said all that to say this: for fiscal year 22, we do need to make some adjustments to the budget. There are a couple suggestions in front of you. One of the things I do want to point out, anything that you see underlined in red would be my recommendation as your CFO. Obviously, the board can change that however you see fit. And one thing to note is the fiscal year 22 personnel request of $500,000. That's on the board here because that would be a recurring expense. And I just want to make sure that you realize it's in the budget currently. Those were for positions that staff felt were imperative to operations, more or less. And so if we want to go through them, or if you...
Yeah, I want to go through them.
Okay, so one-time excess, $2.3 million. That's really just the excess from the FY22 budget based on tax at 3.2%. So certainly, if tax is reduced, we can reduce that. The FY22 step and COLA, I have that marked for reduction. Thoughts that went into that were just, if we're thinking about a $17 million adjustment to the budget, whether it be in revenue or whether it be in expenditures, I would not recommend increasing recurring operating costs. The personnel requests I just noted, the increase in outside agencies of $150,000. This is representative of the increase in FY22 over 21, so I would suggest not increasing them and making them flat funded. The vacancy savings of $1 million that was suggested to incorporate into the budget.
Explain that, vacancy savings.
Vacancy savings, generally each year the county has savings from vacant positions. These vacant positions change throughout the year, but there could be 20 to 30 positions at any one time that are vacant. And so in the past, the board has we have not really budgeted for these savings. Now, why? There's a couple of things. Number one, I think that it provides flexibility in the budget. Another consideration would be that we generally pay out some accrued paid time leave, so it could be vacation or personal time that we're paying out that would also eat into some of these savings. we, we just have not generally budgeted for them, but they do occur, and at the end of every year, we do generally have some vacancy savings. Generally, we have some in detention. Now, some of these are offset by overtime and part-time wages as well, so that's something to consider too. Even with all that being said, we generally have some left over at the end of the year. So this incorporates those savings into the budget. So all I could really say further to that is that it doesn't mean that those vacancies aren't going to be filled. It just means that on a rotational basis, we have generally had vacancies on a rotational basis to accumulate up to that savings. And it can change, and so, this is something that the commissioners, if we do implement this and put this in the budget, there's a risk factor there, because, we may budget for vacancy savings that, maybe that's too high or too low. It could fluctuate, so that's something to consider.
How many vacancies are there today? Do we know?
I don't know.
Okay.
Where's the 30 number coming from then?
I think 30 has just kind of been thrown out as a general number. I can get that information for you and send it to you guys.
When we were meeting with you last week, that number was 1.2 million that we had figured out.
We also did not factor into, 1.2 million.
And I noticed in the budget, we already account for some overtime. So.
Yeah, but the overtime that's in the budget is it can change from year to year, and if we have more vacancies, then, we may have more overtime depending on what position it is. I think when we spoke last week about the vacancy savings, it was because, maybe you guys weren't in agreement with my proposed adjustments. But we can, I'm here to listen to what you want to do for fiscal year 22.
I'm thinking back to when we met on Friday, not on Tuesday. The dollar amount that was calculated, it could be as high as 1.9 million, but you shared with us that some of those positions may be in like an enterprise funded area of county government,
right?
Not a general fund. So to be more conservative, we ratcheted that down a little bit from 1.9 million to the lesser 1 or 1.2 million. My opinion, to look at our budget for this year, I'd like to find actually $6 million in savings. I think that can come from the one-time excess, 2.3 million employee turnover. If we keep your budget at $1 million, that's something I've heard other organizations in Washington County tell me that they've just recently started to do that as well, to look at employee turnover savings and not build that into their budget, because it's a cushion that's not necessarily needed. And then if 2.7 million was removed from capital, that would allow our capital budget to be 4 million, which is still 4 million more than what we budgeted for last year in our capital budget. Now, additional savings were put into the capital budget throughout the year, but we would still have $4 million in capital, which is more than what we put into capital during our last budget cycle. So that would be my recommendation, to find $6 million in savings for this budget year, 2.3 million in the one-time excess, you call it, 1 million in employee turnover, let's budget for that for the first time, and 2.7 million to reduce capital spending by. That leaves in place the employee step and COLA increases. The personnel request maybe could be looked at for just some further additional savings. But in my mind, that finds us $6 million in savings, and with probably room to still find more savings. That would be my opinion. But and in doing so, I want to make one point clear, and I've spoken my piece. Sarah, during your presentation, you talked about highway user revenues, and you made the comment that anything from the state is not guaranteed. I absolutely agree with you, and that's part of my concern when we bank on the disparity grant, about $8 million a year. By maxing out our income tax rate, we take full advantage of that disparity grant. But that's not guaranteed, and that was actually in the chopping block this budget cycle as well. I don't want to put the county in a position where we budget for that year after year, we grow into that, and it's taken away from us, just like highway user revenues were taken away from us. That's not guaranteed money, and I just don't think it's wise. to count on that grant year after year when we know at least the last 2 budget cycles. I think one year the General Assembly was looking at removing it. I think most recently the governor was looking at removing it or reducing it in his budget, the disparity grant. We just can't count on that because it's not guaranteed, and we know it has a history of being looked at for consideration for eliminating or reducing. That would impact our budget. I think we shouldn't prepare to have that disparity grant year after year. So those would be my recommendations.
What is I guess what I need to know is, bottom line here, are you done with your slides, by the way?
Yes, I am. This is my last.
Bottom line here is, your opinion as a CFO and a CPA, we're showing, we started with a $17 million loss. We're basing a lot of things on EDC, which is great. We're doing great, but that's not guaranteed either. I mean, I've heard figures thrown out everywhere about shovel ready. I don't think anybody knows what shovel ready means, but maybe our business development. We got 175 million shovel ready. I gotta know, what do we have to make up and who gets killed? That's all I need to know. What do we have to make up, and not speculating on EDC or, we've already rolled this in. It's hard to roll it back. Someone's gonna get hurt at 17 million. I didn't vote for it, and that's the reason I didn't vote for it. I mean, everybody's scrambling now of trying to figure out how we cover this. But I think that should have maybe be done before we voted to roll it back in 30 minutes. 30 minutes, we voted to roll 17 million off the books. I need more information before I can make a decision. They might be right, I don't know. That's why we have 5 commissioners. 3 of them think they're right, and possibly 2 of us think they're wrong. But I just don't see how you can roll back common knowledge. I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I hire CPAs to do my stuff. I'm not a CPA. Maybe everybody ought to go to CPA school. Bottom line is we got a pot of 17 million in it, and we took it out. Someone suffers for that. We don't make that all up in EDC. We don't all make it up on this. We don't all make it up on, someone's gonna suffer. And you know what's gonna do? It's gonna roll back to everyone. And the motion was, let's not defund, that's what we did, fire and rescue. We might not defund them directly, our guys in the academy, that would kill me. But what about reserve fleets? What about training center? What about holding up funding for other things? The volunteers. Somebody's gonna suffer. Sheriff's not gonna be able to get vehicles. Deputy out there told me he just put 180,000 miles on his vehicle. Somebody's not gonna be able to get vehicles. Somebody's not gonna be able to get a dump truck. You know, I mean, we've worked really hard, and in 20 years, if I'd have stood up on a mountain and said, elect Randall Wagner, I promise you in 20 years I won't raise your taxes more than $200. I'd be landslide Randy. So, I mean, it just doesn't make sense that we're doing a plan after we cut it. Maybe we should have took a year like I begged. I'm all about fiscal government, guys. You know, I think we just overkilled it here. I don't see how we make up $17 million without crushing people when we don't really need to do that right now. We're probably, I'm not a doomsdayer by any means, but I see a recession. What if that happens? We're preparing for it. God bless us all. But what happens to EDC? I've seen things shut down within a month. So maybe we ought to keep some good reserve to get through the rough times. We're just getting rid of it all. And we can cut 6 million this year, that leaves us 10 million to cut next year. What's the difference? Next year's gonna be a terrible year. 23 is gonna be terrible. 22, we're gonna get by. And thank God everybody's got a job in the county. I can't promise what's gonna happen. This is simple math, people. Why did we do this in that quick of a fatal blow? I don't know why we did it. 30 minutes we cut the budget 17 million. How many people talked to directors? How many people talked to you for hours? How many people visited Andrew? How many public works? Come up here, Andrew. I want to hear what you have to say. You're here for some reason. Were you bringing Andrew in, or?
We've asked him to come in.
Well, how does it affect your department? Don't embellish anything. I just want to know.
Introduce yourself and position.
Andrew Ashman, Director of Public Works. Sarah obviously looks at the high-end global perspective and what's going on there, and I try to capture and look out for what's happening at division level at Public Works. And Public Works, we predominantly provide service to the citizens, and I think of that number, probably 20 million is about tied up in Public Works and maybe 4 million or so less from funding from highway user revenues and other grants. So it is a sizable pie. And of that pie, when you look at departments, you know, each department may vary, but you're running maybe 80%. Some departments maybe even higher personnel costs for what we actually do to operate. And I've been in here talking about wage compression and minimum wage, because particularly our part-time staff, we're trying to hire people at $12 an hour. And then we know by 2025, we're gonna be at 15. So at least from my end, I know our personnel costs, particularly on the part-time side, and potentially, you know, to work out some compression issues on the full-time side, we're not gonna be at 3.5% increase. We are gonna be at potentially 25% just to keep above minimum wage. So again, I mean, that's what I see on my end in terms of trends. So yeah, if we're talking about right now reducing a step in a COLA, I still have to pay, according to Maryland law, you know, come January 1st, it's going to increase, what's it go to? Another dollar or so an hour?
Yeah, 75 cents or $1
Yeah,
or something
and
like
we've projected it out that if we do nothing but follow the 3.5% out to 2025, all the way up through grade 6, I believe, will be compressed. So right now, even when you take our full-time, like our equipment operators at highways, they're around $15.60 an hour, so they're about $4 above minimum wage. So if we just project out, there'll only be $1 above what minimum wage is at 2025. So those are the trends that I see. I can't tell you, you know, specifically what to do as far as what revenue we're going to see, but expense-wise, you know, I've been in here. She mentioned the highway user revenue. The trend that we've seen is state and federal funding, particularly for highway user revenue, and on transit has been flat or reduced. I mean, this past year in transit, we lost state money, state contribution to grants. So yes, there are those stimulus programs, but they're kind of one-year things. So I don't know what would happen 4 or 5 years.
What cuts will you suffer? Transit, for instance.
What's that?
What cuts will you suffer? Just transit, for instance.
Well, I mean, again, it takes, you know, money to pay a driver to go out and do a route that's operating, and we operate that, you know, as a service. Certainly we don't, you know, operate revenue neutral from the fare that we collect to operate that bus out there. So you start looking at if we have to reduce or flatline our budget because the offsetting federal grants and state grants that we receive aren't keeping up, and we're needing to pay drivers. Right now, our bus drivers start at $13.40 an hour and $14.40. So we're about $4 less than what the school board now is paying. So yeah, you start looking at, do we cut evening service? Do we cut Saturday service? Do we cut service to Smithsburg because that's our lowest ridership? And then there's the corresponding effect of the paratransit service, which is basically the point-to-point people for doctor's appointments, disability. So I mean, if you told me here's what you have to work with, I'm going to go down through and say,
I got you.
You know, those are the decisions we're going to look at.
I think what we're missing is this is not, like I said last week, for me to get a raise, for me to put more money in my pocket, for me to have a better office. This is, I mean, what you just said, we're serving the public. For, you know, $4 a week. I know that's a lot. $200 a year, I can pay my electric bill for a month. But for $4 a week, we're gonna, even the people you just talked about, just transit, we didn't go any, I don't wanna drag us on forever. Just transit, you're hurting the poor people. And they're not the ones gonna be paying $200. You know, the people make $30,000. So service to the citizens is what's gonna be hurt. People are gonna get hurt. Service to the citizens. And I just can't imagine, I've got many phone calls for $200 a year as an average. They're saying, no, I don't want this, I don't want this, I don't want my snow removed, you know. And what about when we get to outside agencies? What if we gotta cut down next year because we're 11 million in the hole? I mean, you heard what Dr. Clobber, no one said we're gonna cut Dr. Clobber, but he got nervous. If we cut him $1, he loses $1.8 million from grant money, which we use. Is he dependent on grant money for the rest? I don't know. How about Commission on Aging? How about the Humane Society? Can they suffer cuts? Do you think we're gonna have to cut them?
Well,
Commissioner Wagner, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
$200 is
Right.
the reduction in taxes. you know what the average household? for
50,000.
What?
50,000.
No, do you know what they pay in Washington County taxes per year?
Okay, $200, explain that.
Okay, well, I'm just saying, if you don't know that, please don't lecture me on what you think I don't know.
You want to talk about how you're gonna fund it with EDC? Let's have a quiz. I'll answer yours, you answer mine.
The average household, just taking some information, the average property tax assessment amounts to $2,341.56 for the
Property
average home
tax
in Washington
assessment?
County.
Did we raise property tax?
For the average income tax,
No, we didn't raise property tax.
$1,428 for the average. That's $3,769
Wayne,
is what the
20
average
years,
Washington County household
that's the
pays in
first
taxes.
tax increase in 20
But I'm
years.
saying, you were questioning us in our due diligence with the budget, and that's a question you couldn't answer.
Well, you
I
know
think
what?
that's significant.
You wanna have a quiz?
It's
Tell me all about
significant,
how you're
Randy.
gonna fund it with EDC. Tell me that. Now, that's you all's funding this with EDC. Tell me how you're gonna fund it. I'm a simple type of guy. 17 million in this pot, nothing in this pot, let's move it over. Who's gonna suffer? That's how I think.
Can I, offer a suggestion? We all respect everybody's opinion. Talked to Mr. Burkett this morning, had a nice talk today about respecting opinions. How about we come up with some type of compromise that we all can maybe win a little bit, and let me make that suggestion, okay? Commissioner Baker, everybody gave us a suggestion, not saying you have to. I'd like to see us maybe consider the reduction from 3.2 to 3%. And perhaps then that'll lessen any of these, or soften some of these unexpected consequences that we hadn't prepared for last week. Let's then allow our economic development to catch up. We all know it's not gonna happen right away. Some are 1 or 2 years out in a row. We have other obligations that might be paid back. So then let's soften it to 3%. Allow economic development to catch up over the next year, and then go back and review. If we see our numbers are more viable and we have a better opportunity to give that benefit back to the taxpayers, then let's address it next year, then to go back to 2.8. That's all I'm asking, is for us all to find some common ground. Mr. Wagner, Commissioner, you make some valid points. Ask us all to come together as a team, working together, and do this slowly. And I promise you, personally, if I see economic development coming back strong, I will also agree to do that cut. Just let's do things slow and take it methodically, and maybe lessen some of these unintended consequences that we're hearing about. And that's all I ask. And open the floor to any other Commissioner Burkett.
I just, I sat with Sarah again for 2.5 hours, and Commissioner Kiefer and John last Friday. If you look at where we can cut, and I think Commissioner Kiefer laid that out really well, nobody is personally affected by this cut. Saying that, I hear what you're saying, and I'm willing to consider that. I think that I think it's a way of just meeting halfway, and I'm willing to
appreciate
consider
those
that.
words. Thank
What's
you.
that money save us, Sarah? 3 instead of 3.2, 5 million?
Overall, like, I try to look at the overall impact, so, I think it would be, you know, you're looking at, instead of a $11 million reduction for income tax, maybe 9 million, and instead of 6.1 million, you're looking at 4 million, so I would say that's around 13 million versus the 17 million.
Does that help a lot, right?
Well, it helps, yes.
I don't think we're gonna
absolutely.
see it roll back to 2.8.
But
I don't think,
please-
I think that's
please.
already been voted on. I mean, I'd motion to roll it back to 3 and take it for,
You know, I'd just again like to repeat us being cautious and take it slow, let economic development catch up, and some of these unintended consequences that we've heard of with the municipalities and all to maybe soften and lessen that impact on them. Let economic development catch up, which we see a lot of stuff happening, and then consider then taking it back to 2.8. I think that's a compromise. I think it shows us all working together as a team, working for the people at the same time. And if someone would want to, I don't know how we would do that, have
I'd be interested. Did you have
Is
something to
there-
say, Commissioner?
Yeah,
Baker?
obviously.
I want your thoughts
Yeah,
first.
obviously, I'm interested in 2.8%. I didn't think we needed to raise it when they raised the taxes, and I think we could easily survive with the 2.8%. I can sit here and tell you right now, next year, I'm gonna be pushing for the 2.8% if we decide to go with the 3 point.
Well, if economic
3%.
development is, I would help you.
If we go with the 3% versus the 3.2% this year, I'll certainly be interested in, and that would be my guidance to you as the CFO to, if there's two other votes, at least in the 2022 budget, we would be directing you to make sure we come in with a balanced budget with a 2.8% local income tax rate. That's what if I do the 3% this year, and I don't know where I'm going right now, but if I was to support Commissioner Klein's request, I would certainly be supporting 2.8 next year again.
I personally think that, I think people are still gonna suffer, but I'm willing to compromise to 3, because I don't think we're gonna get any, I think we're gonna make it I won't agree to 2.8, but I might very well agree to 3. I just wanna have a plan. We have no plan.
We do have a plan.
Yeah, plan to drop it and cut.
No, we're not cutting anybody, we're not making any reductions.
Come on, Terry, someone's gotta suffer.
Randy, I don't wanna get into a big debate with you.
Well,
You
that's
have
why we're
spent tens of
discussing.
millions of dollars on, and this is just my opinion, you have spent
Yeah.
tens of millions of dollars on infrastructure projects that the taxpayer shouldn't be accountable for. That's my opinion. I didn't support that. So we can get in here and we can hit each other, we can crush each other. and
I
that's what
understand that, Terry, but then.
all I wanna do is get my taxpayer, I didn't support the 3.2%, and you certainly didn't listen to Mr. Kiefer's request and his thoughts on how we didn't have to go from 2.8 to 3.2 when you decided to vote for the tax increase. And by the way, you're the first Republican that I know of in over 50 years in county government that's increased taxes in Washington
Can I
County.
say something real quick?
No, I don't want to get,
Well, you don't want to. Let me
No,
just make
no,
a-
Randy, you're cutting me off. Let me
Go ahead.
finish. Thank you.
I gotta have a.
So
rebuttal
I'm
here.
just telling you what my thoughts are. If I decide to go with the 3%, take it from 3.2 to 3%, then next year I'm gonna be pushing for 2.8. And also, in addition, I'm gonna have a hard time supporting $12 million of more borrowing in our capital, borrowing money for capital projects when they just voted to put $10 million of surplus money in the capital. And my thoughts were, take $2 million of that, $2 or $3 million of the capital money that they voted on to move out of the surplus to the capital budget, take $3 million of that and put it back in the general fund. Or take $3 million of that and use that towards the debt service payment that we're getting ready to pay this year. That saves another $3 million.
Well,
Okay.
So there's
just
all kinds of
one-
money in places that we can
Terry,
save.
I have to address the remark about the first Republican.
Well,
There was 3 of us, actually. You know, and I don't want this to be personal, because you know I like you, we get along.
I'd take
But you've been a 8-year president, a 4-term. And I walk in the first day and I get a call from the administrator saying we're $4 million deficit and fire and rescue's failing. How did that happen on your watch?
Brandy, can I address that for a
Okay.
second? Every year I've been a county commissioner, except for last year, because as we were working on our budget, the pandemic was starting. Every year I was a county commissioner, our county staff came to us and said, if you only raise taxes by this much, this is how much more we could generate. Having county staff come to the commissioners, it's always easier to raise taxes than it is to find savings somewhere. That's just how it works.
It's been going on there, Terry,
It
for
happened when we had a new changeover in the board. There was a majority of
Wayne, you were here
commissioners
too.
that was
How
willing
did
to
it
raise
get to that
taxes.
point?
And
That's all.
Randy, I challenge
They
you to
found
go
the 3
back.
commissioners willing to raise taxes.
Go
is what
back
happened.
and look at every time that something was asked for emergency services, go back and show where I voted against it. Everything
Well, you weren't
that's
here for the SAFER grant. I don't know. You didn't vote on this because you weren't here.
every
Well,
time Dale Hill, any association president,
You know what,
any
guys?
emergency services
I want to make it work
project
too,
I've
but
supported.
I want a plan. There's no plan.
I've supported
gentlemen,
everything
can-
for our
can I
policemen,
interrupt?
our
Chop this
emergency
down.
services. I have supported every request that's ever been brought to me.
All right,
You
gentlemen,
can't come in 30 minutes
I've
and
I've
just
supported
cut a
every
budget
request
17
that's
million.
ever
I
asked of me.
motioned to 3.
And I don't
Can,
like.
well, first of
Well, we
all,
gotta see
can
what
I
the
interrupt
chief
everybody and
Williams says.
talk?
What do you wanna do?
We have a possible compromise where everybody can win and the taxpayers, and I guarantee you, we
there you
come
go.
back and look at it
And
at
that's gonna
2.8.
be great for all of us.
And everybody walks, and we walk out of here that we've had a serious discussion and work together. So now I need a point of order. How do we,
Well, let's find out where we're gonna get the
if we're
two
gonna
point
do?
seven five million from.
Okay,
And I just, although I would consider going to 3%, I think that it would be important to take the attitude at least of 2.8%, and we still make Mr. Kiefer's suggested changes and try to start thinking of a smaller government, spending less money, and just. I hope that makes sense of what I'm saying.
I think I'm
That
in
does make-
agreement with you, and that's why I say let's let this economic development catch up.
I
Go
just,
ahead.
I just want to say something real quick. So, any adjustment that we make, it'll drive the revenue side, and we need to make that expenditure side equal the revenue side. And so when you think about, some of those reductions, generally, if our, recurring expenditures are not as much as our revenue, we push that into capital for one time, so that creates a pathway for not increasing recurring expenses. So I understand what you're saying, but I have to have both of those amounts equal.
And there's where my concern was. This is why I voted for it. I think it's unfair for Randy to say that we came in here in 30 minutes and made a decision. I didn't interrupt you, Randy. And I ran in 2017 on reducing taxes, and I believed that then, and I believed it when they raised taxes. I was against that. But if we leave that tax rate where it is now, and you think about all this growth that we're seeing in the community, what's gonna happen to government? It's just gonna grow bigger and bigger. And that was my concern. That's why I voted for that tax decrease, because I see what's going on in our community. And everybody here, Sarah, everybody, has agreed that there is waste in government. I don't know that it's 10%, and I've said that, but there's waste. And can we find that waste and stop it? So can we make these cuts in good faith and knowing that we're gonna have a little more
So
income?
what we could do if we went to a 3.0 tax rate, we could not, we could keep that capital reduction in reserve and not assign it to a project, or you could assign it to a project. I think where I'm coming from is, I'm not opposing what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm only gonna support, I think, at this point in time, his adjustments in the budget is, what was the 2.74, Wayne?
But I can't artificially reduce revenues. That's where I'm coming from,
To get-
so.
To get them to balance, if you're gonna have increased revenue, you have to put it somewhere. You can
That's
put it in-
right.
You can
So
put it
that's
in a
why I'm
category
saying
where
it
you would
should-
come back and look at
It
it later.
should go into
I think that's what
capital
Okay.
to balance it, and that doesn't mean we have to spend it, but it should go into the capital fund, because that's kind of where our one-time
I
funding
think this is how I understand it. I think what Commissioner Burke is recommending is a more than fair opportunity compromise. Essentially, reduce the tax rate to 3.0, but operate as if we have a 2.8% tax rate.
Yes.
And in essence, we still want to find savings within our budget, because there's savings to be found. Employee turnover is something where we could save, even in capital reductions.
Okay.
Let's operate as if we have a 2.8% tax rate, but do it on a 3.0% tax rate. I think we can proceed with our budget at a 2.8% tax rate. I really do. I don't think the commissioners who disagree with me on that really take into account how much we have looked at the budget. The notion of let's wait a year before we lower tax rates, that's in contradiction to what they did just 4 or 5 months into a term, raising the tax rate, not taking a year to study what increase in taxes would mean to the county's budget. I'd also say the reason why we do need to be a little more mindful of our budget, I'm pulling out the 5-year plan that was given to us a couple months ago, and you were projecting a shortfall then. I think what that amounts to is staff is setting us up for, if we continue on this path of spending, another tax increase. I don't wanna go into another tax increase. I think that's very dangerous. I think we need to be a bit more mindful of our spending. When we spoke on Friday, Sarah, one of the things you mentioned about was if we did this new office furniture you couldn't get for your employees. That's not what I wanna hear from my CFO when we talk about trying to find money, an argument of not getting new office furniture. That argument falls flat on its face. I would be in agreement with the 3.0% tax rate. That's a reduction. I think it's something that it looks like we have all 5 commissioners support on. I don't have my glasses on. I can't see who's shaking their head.
Mine keeps steaming up on me.
I can't wear it.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah, but I'm not sure we could, we're still hurting people if we operate as a 2.8.
No, because you're still gonna have the money
Still coming in.
in a
Well, we're
position.
gonna be as frugal as possible,
Right.
Yeah.
okay?
I think there's savings to be had, and I think it's unfair for you to label or make an assumption about how much time I've spent with our budget.
Yeah, but I mean, we
That's
didn't
not
plan,
right.
Wayne. Did you know the municipalities were gonna suffer out of that? Did you know that?
Did I know what?
That the municipalities' tax differential, they would lose money on
And
their.
you know, that's how crooked this whole taxing scheme and structure is, that the state of Maryland manipulates our budget the way that they do.
And I'm
In
not
poor
saying.
communities, in you asked me a question, let me answer.
But I'm not
In
disagreeing
poor
with you.
Rural communities, the state of Maryland tells us, we'll give you more money if you tax the heck out of your citizens.
Everybody gets
And then
more
we'll give
money.
more money to your
And they call it
municipality.
disparity.
That makes it all that much more difficult to actually lower taxes
Weren't
for
we
the
just talking
citizens.
about these
We
trillions
have
of
a
dollars?
crooked and manipulated taxing structure,
I understand.
and I wanna stop that.
Weren't we just talking about how many trillions of dollars Biden was gonna put out? Well, that's wrong.
And I had a citizen thank me for
Too much money,
for
too much.
lowering the tax rate and forwarding me an email about how much debt that is going to add to every American in the United States.
Yeah,
Let the
it's
federal, if the federal government wants
Okay.
to tax to oblivion, that's
There
what
you go.
hurt us all.
I'm
But
just
what I'm
saying.
in control of.
I
Okay,
wanna
gentlemen,
stress-
let's
we're
get
on-
a- let's
Control
get-
of the leaner
Gentlemen,
budget.
we're on
I want a
national
plan.
stuff.
That's
Could
all
we,
I
Let's
want.
get
could we-
moving
plan.
forward as to how we're gonna move
All right,
forward with
how
the
do we-
3% versus the 2.8.
Can I get Sarah to say one more thing, so
Yeah,
that
'cause-
just the general public's aware? When we met Friday, you shared with me, I asked you how much we have in reserves. Can you tell me what that amount was you told me?
Sure. The county's reserve target is 17% for the general fund. That's per policy. We can't go below 17%. 17% amounts to about 43 million.
43 million.
43 million,
And
yes.
when you, and Commissioner Kiefer asked you, what is the best case scenario? What should approximately we have in reserves to be,
Generally, local governments have anywhere between 17 and 25%.
what would that amount be?
25%?
No,
The 43. Right,
43 is the
what's our percent
17.
right now?
We have about 53, and I believe that's around 21%.
okay. So,
About
All right,
that.
well,
so we have about 10 million extra in reserves.
That's right.
And I've said all along, the county should not be in the business of making money, especially, I've said this too, the county does not earn, or does not earn the taxpayers' money, they take it. And they need to be respectful of that on all levels of government. And that's $10 million over and above what you say we should have in reserve.
The
that we have
lowest amount
sitting in
possible,
reserve.
right, by policy.
Yes.
And I would say too that a lot of that was gained during the fiscal year 2020 year end, where we talked about when we had that large surplus.
And-
That
and-
did boost it quite substantially.
Yeah, and really, couldn't we spend some of that and do away with even all that?
Money everywhere.
I would not
you
use
go.
reserves for any recurring costs. So I would suggest that those reserves be
What-
used for
what I'd
one-time
like to
expenditures.
do
I'll just, and then
is
can I
ask
just
Commissioner
make-
What's our
Baker
next
with-
step?
with
What's our
your-
next step?
with your guidance, that's if we wanted to
Before
go
we
to
go ahead,
3.0.
I wanna make a motion to move forward.
Can I just say something very quickly? We did have, just so you know, we had the calls with the rating agencies the other day, all three of them last week, and they all asked about reserves. So you're right, those numbers were, I think they're great, and I think we, I think we need to do what we can to keep the reserves at a high level, so. Let me just say this, and I know you're talking about what we're doing. I've been working with our department heads and division directors, and I can tell you that all of our employees are looking for ways to operate more efficiently. And I can promise you that that's the direction that's come from me, from our division directors and department heads, and all the employees are gonna be doing that. They've been doing that. So, there's some departments that are really I mean, they're operating on a very lean, budget, but we're always looking to be more efficient. And so what I can say to the board from the county administrator's seat is that, you know, all the employees are gonna be involved in making sure that we can operate more efficiently. But I also say that I will come to you when I think that we need to do, you know, we need to do certain things. I mean, we talked about personnel requests. I think I mentioned in the last meeting, you know, we went over those personnel requests, all the personnel requests that came in, and we narrowed it down to the ones that we thought were imperative based on people we needed to make sure that we got the proper permits and provided the proper service. So, what I can say to you is that we will continue to do that, and across the board with county employees. But then again, I will come to you when I think there's something that we need. We will come to you and provide that information to you, so you can make an informed decision on whether we need that or not. So you know, I want to thank all the county employees who are continuing to try to provide efficient operations. But and you know, I can tell you that we can all be more efficient. So I think we can do that, and we're working on that. So so that's my promise to you, that we'll continue to do that.
Thank you, John.
What I'd like to do right now, Commissioner Baker, I think we need some guidance on point of order, if you want to make a motion for what you suggested or agreed to. How do we reverse the two, is there a motion to reconsider, or how's that done?
Right now, the county income tax rate is set at 3.2%. That was by resolution adopted June 4th, 2019. Resolution RS 2019-50. To reduce the rate, you would need to adopt a new resolution, which there's a draft of one in your packet, setting the rate. The draft, based on the direction given last week, was set at 2.8. However, that can easily be amended to 3.0.
We could make a motion to amend that. Is that the correct order? Mr. Baker, you're welcome to add any conditions in that motion, like operating.
Well, what we want to do is see if there's any more conversation, and then we'll move forward. Then
is there any
basically all we have to do is agree to amend the
You're adopting a new resolution setting the rate at 3.0% and repealing the.
Well, we're kind of working on it right now.
Okay.
And obviously that all takes effect.
But we're going to decide on his request first.
Well, you can make that part of your motion, or
I'm ready to yield.
let's spell it out so we have it accurate, okay? You could summarize it by making a motion first, so we know what to do. Is that okay?
Well, he had on the agenda.
Yeah, the next item, so we could end this
resolution
conversation.
Anyhow, so the resolution's after we agree to what adjustments we're going to make. I just wanted to make sure we could do
Is that appropriate or not,
that.
or we do it all in the next?
That's what we were going to do originally, make adjustments and then vote on the resolution. So what are the adjustments?
Yeah, I'm not saying, I'm just making sure we do it correct.
Yeah,
That's
so,
all
well,
I'm
we
asking.
want to make sure we all agree on the adjustments.
All right, what's the adjustments? Let's speak them out. Wayne, go ahead.
The adjustments,
And then Sarah, it'll be up to you to do it.
so our motion will read in essence, I move to adopt and I'm not making the
No,
motion.
it's the rehearsal.
I move to adopt the resolution reducing the county's income tax rate from 3.2 to 2.8%.
Or 3.0 to 2.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
move to adopt the resolution
So practice.
reducing the county's income tax rate from 3.2 to 3.0%, beginning January 1st, 2022.
Mm-hmm.
And we direct county staff to budget for employee turnover and vacancy savings,
Okay.
re-examine personnel requests. I would like to add in the disparity grant should not continue to be allocated towards ongoing recurring operating expenses. That would be a request of mine.
Well, could that be something we consider either way, not as a habit, because we may have something, a recurring cost.
He
we
said
don't-
it was his.
It would be my wish. It would be my wish that the disparity grant not be allocated towards ongoing recurring expenses because it's not guaranteed from year to year.
Okay, but we could if we wanted to.
We could.
Okay, that would be, we would refrain from doing it as an ongoing expense, but we have the option to fund something. So, like if economic development kicked in, that would take away the disparity grant.
And that would be the same as on the 2.8. If we get a disparity grant for 2.8, is that?
Well, right now at 3, we
Three out of
recommended it, we get the rate at 3.
But we used it at 2.8, so we're not gonna use it at 3?
We'll get that, that's automatic.
Yeah, well, what you're saying, it can be cut any time, no matter what your
He
rate.
just doesn't want to be.
Okay.
We're growing dependent on something that's not guaranteed.
All right,
I
so
wanna get us
there's,
off of that
okay,
dependency.
you're giving us a little flexibility with that, correct? Okay.
I would also
And
like
what
to
else?
suggest, this was not my idea, this was Commissioner Burkett's, that maybe we establish routine, regular meetings, maybe it's monthly, maybe it's more frequently, to look at our budget and to help us further identify those savings. And honestly, it's in an effort to prevent the growth of government.
I would agree with that, but I'd like that to be a regular scheduled public meeting that would be done with all 5 of us.
Oh,
Could that be
absolutely,
on
that's
the?
fine.
Okay, is that all right like that? So that means first Tuesday of the month or whatever, we always have some type of update or where we're at.
And I would say, yes.
That's a lot in a motion, but I think you could be able to repeat that.
And if other commissioners have input, please.
Mr. Commissioner Kiefer, if you could, another thing that I mentioned in that meeting that we had on Friday was developing a employee incentive program to recognize waste, and maybe as they recognize it and submit it and it can be fixed, then they get a bonus or a portion of that savings as a one-time bonus.
That's a good idea, but I'd like to keep that as a separate program. Would that be okay?
Could we have that as an agenda item for our next meeting?
Yeah, and we still, I believe, have that 145,000 employee incentive fund. I think it's still available. Did that ever dissolve? So we still have that ready to be enacted, so we can make that an agenda item separate of this motion.
Yeah, and I'll just say, and I think I mentioned this in our meeting, that there used to be, years ago, there used to be I think they called it the IDEA incentive, but there was an employee incentive. So, any of those programs, I mean, I'm interested in looking at those as to, to find ways to be more efficient. I think, employees are looking for ways to be more efficient and provide the services to the citizens. That's where I would like to see that go, and we can have a separate discussion at another time. But
I would just offer that I'm happy to have those conversations now, and I feel like that's a lot of what I already do, is you have me to look at the operation and bring forth proposals or suggestions. We're working on a couple right now. Because I do want to make a distinction between what is waste and what is just spending. I mean, that may be a matter of preference, whether, I spend money in one area, is that a necessary project or not? There's kind of a gray line there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm happy to extend the invitation myself for my division and departments to have those conversations, because we're doing that anyway.
I like the idea of allowing our employees an opportunity to speak up. Maybe they have to do it in a confidential manner because they don't want any kind of retaliation in the department. I've had 2 employees reach out to me since last Tuesday, call me up and say, Commissioner Kiefer, you can find savings right here if only you do this. And I'm thinking, okay, this needs to be brought forward, because I don't disagree at all that our division directors know a lot about their budget and a lot about their operation. But certainly those employees that are in the field, or those employees that are, doing most of the work, the hands-on work, can certainly identify savings as well.
And they should be nicely rewarded for that.
Yeah, but I do want to say, I mean, sometimes we know operationally, sometimes you're talking about, we could contract out
Gentlemen,
services
I'd like,
less than.
I think the
so
incentive
that's, I
program's a
think,
good
another
idea.
basket.
We'll bring that back. Commissioner Baker or anybody ready to make the motion on the
Okay, well, I just want to
suggestions?
make sure that his adjustments, 2.7,
Go to 3.2 to 3.0.
but the adjustments are still going to be,
As if we're gonna
yeah.
we're gonna work on a 2.8, but we're going to set the rate. We're gonna lower it to 3.0.
Right.
But we're gonna operate on a lean, frugal budget, trying to even make that lower. And there were several suggestions about vacancy requests for.
Yeah, Wayne, go over those 3 items and.
Wayne, did you want to phrase it as a motion or as?
And the physical.
And
Would
Terry.
you like me to make this the official?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Terry, whoever can second it once, so we have it in the record. Thank you. Wayne,
Okay.
the floor
I
is
would
yours.
move to adopt a resolution to reduce the county's income tax rate from its current 3.2% to 3.0%, lowering the rate by 0.2%. In doing so, I would direct staff to not rely on the disparity grant for ongoing operating expenses.
Unless necessary.
Unless necessary.
Thank you.
To reduce, to budget for employee turnover, and to plan for routine monthly budget meetings to identify further savings.
Yep.
Are
Right.
those the 3 points?
I think that hits them, what I have.
So, give me the amounts of each.
The employee turnover,
Uh-huh.
1 million.
Okay.
I suppose we could continue with the capital reduction of 2.7 million.
Yep, I wanna do that.
We will likely have additional revenues that need to be accounted for.
Yes, and you can either, put the excess into capital, or you can put it in as like a reserve. Like, you can put it to
We can put it in a
reserves
reserve and then move it to capital
if you
need
want
be
to.
later.
Yeah, you can have a budget item, you know, as a, like a reserve,
Okay.
if that's where you want me to push the excess.
So let me restate the motion. Move to adopt a resolution to reduce the county's income tax rate from 3.2% to 3.0%, effectively reducing it 0.2%. Ask county not to rely on the disparity grant for ongoing operations unless necessary. To make adjustments including employee turnover and capital reductions of 2.7 million, employee turnover being 1.0 million, and to continue with routine monthly budget meetings to discuss savings.
Okay, that's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
I have a first and a second, is there any further discussion? I do have a comment, I wanna thank you all for working together on this, I think we showed teamwork, we had disagreements, but we meshed together to get a solution. Hearing that, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner.
Thank you, you're welcome, thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
Seems that to
Randy.
be the last issue on our agenda
We'll give
since
you
we
your hug
kinda
out here in the
combined that, so
hallway.
I need a motion to go into closed session.
Motion to go into closed session.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you.